Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian from Kingdom Hearts Cross Nation, and today we have some really important news that we need to go over, because not only is it going to potentially impact Union Cross in general, but to go as far as to even impact the gaming industry as a whole as well. Now, before we get started, I just want to quickly let you guys know that I'm sorry I haven't been able to post any videos lately. I have been spending the last few days at Disney with my family on a little mini vacation, since apparently we still had some usable tickets left over that I wasn't aware of. But I'm back and I'm looking to start posting more videos again. Now, if you aren't aware, a few days ago, I believe it was the Senator of Missouri here in the US actually proposed a bill to more or less ban loot boxes among video games, as well as any sort of pay-to-win features. This has been covered in news websites such as USA Today, Kotaku, Variety, and for the rest of this video, we will be using the article written by Variety since it had slightly more additional information compared to the other two I just mentioned. But as the title suggests, there has been a bill proposed to essentially ban loot boxes and pay-to-win mechanics, which will severely cripple a major portion of the gaming industry that has kind of been rising within the last few years. One thing that Senator Hawley mentions is that when a game is designed for kids, game developers shouldn't be allowed to monetize addiction. And when kids play games designed for adults, they should be walled off from compulsive microtransactions. Game developers who knowingly exploit children should face legal consequences. Now, as a result of this announcement coming out, as well as the bill being proposed, but of course lobbyists for the gaming industry are obviously going to be fighting against this, because many game companies, including Square Enix, are going to desperately want to try and keep as many of the loot box type style of mechanics, pay to win mechanics, as much as possible, because it's essentially their gold mine at this point in time. And for some companies like Electronic Arts, it's more or less their bread and butter at this point. So to completely strip that away from them is gonna severely cripple them, if not put many of them on the line for their main sources of revenue. So one of the things that they mentioned was that some countries like Belgium and the Netherlands have already taken legal action and forced publishers to modify or remove loot boxes from their games. And we can actually attest to this because of the fact, as we already know, the Union Cross servers in Belgium have indeed been shut down due to the fact that in Belgium, loot boxes and stuff have been made illegal. And because of the fact that gacha games, including Union Cross, are more or less almost entirely centered around the banner pulls that you can pull in the game, and essentially the whole point is to spend money on it for these loot box style of mechanics or features in the games. It was very apparent that Union Cross was going to be shut down in Belgium. That was to be expected, to be honest. The CEO of the ESA also continues to further state that we look forward to sharing with the Senator the tools and the information the industry already provides that keeps the control of in-game spending in parents' hands. Parents already have the ability to limit or prohibit in-game purchases with easy-to-use parental controls. Now, I can tell you right now, that statement right there is complete bullshit, just because of the fact that there's almost little to no actual restrictions or guidance of any form to actually try and keep minors away from these type of game mechanics or features within games, okay? It's these monetization schemes. Even within Union Cross itself, the only actual roadblock that they present to you is at the very beginning of the game when you first download it. There is a pop-up that asks you for your age requirement. And if you happen to be under a certain age, the game won't allow you past a certain point in the game. Now, at first, that might not seem like a bad idea just because of the fact that, you know, it is an age restriction. It's trying to keep minors away from the game. But when you have a game that's actively advertising in the App Store that the game is meant for ages 4 and up, literally children, and yet you're going to have an age system or a restriction in the actual game itself when you first boot up the game, it's kind of contradictive when you think about it. And that should point out to you right away that they know that they're willingly are targeting children with these sort of psychologically manipulative gacha games. That's literally their entire scheme, is to prey on the children. The children would then go for their parents to try and purchase stuff within the game, and they are literally monetizing addiction. The game is made in a way that it's supposed to psychologically try and get you addicted to the game. And studies have been shown that a lot of these loot box and pay-to-win type of mechanics do have the same psychological effects as real-life gambling. And when you have a mobile game like Union Cross, which has Disney characters in it, it is literally a property of Disney itself. On top of the fact that the game is advertised for ages 4 and up, it's a very worrying situation to be in, especially because of the fact that I myself, of course, am a hardcore Kingdom Hearts fan, and to see like one of my own favorite franchises kind of be diminished in this type of way is it doesn't feel good for me either. Partially also because of the fact that we all well know that every 12-year-old out there, I myself have done this in the past too when I was little. If you see an age restriction that you know for a game that you're going to need to be a certain age to bypass and stuff, or to play the game, all you do is just simply put in a birth date that makes you seem like you're 18 or 21 or older, and then you're fine. And for that to be the only type of roadblock in the way to try and prevent minors from playing the game, to me, it clearly shows that they're not actively trying to go out of the way to make it difficult for people to play the game. It is very obvious, okay? If they did, they would change the age rating on the game. They would make it so that only like administrator privileges on those accounts can actually download the game in the first place before even playing the game and stuff. Like there's multiple things they could do, but they just choose not to do so. Continuing on, Senator Hawley continues to state that if it passes, it would apply new consumer protections to games targeted at children under the age of 18. The protections will also apply to games with a wider audience where the developers knowingly allow minors to play and engage in microtransactions. The bill will ban loot boxes with randomized and partially randomized rewards. It will also prohibit certain exploitative pay-to-win mechanics. Now, as I just kind of explained, this will obviously hit Union Cross in some way, shape, or form. Now I'll go into it a bit as to what are some types of routes that developers for Union Cross could decide to go in if this bill does happen to pass here in the US. But at the very least, like I mentioned before, because of the fact that the game is blatantly advertised for ages 4 and up and has Disney characters in it. It's supposed to, like, and it's trying to pass off as a super, friendly type of game, especially with, Disney in it and such. This is definitely going to hit Union Cross hard in some way, shape, or form. At the very least, the game will most likely be bumped up to a 21 or older age rating in order to even play, at which point, even if that ends up being the case, who's to say that Disney wouldn't have a problem with that if that ends up being the case as well, because of the fact that Disney has a reputation of being a family-friendly brand, and to have essentially a game tied to them that is only allowed for a mature audience, I can see it as grounds for something that Disney might not want happen to their game, in which case they could very easily just choose not to have the game be allowed to be played anymore. I could see it happening. Now, to further add on to the topic, Senator Hawley is not the first U.S. politician to have proposed loot box legislations. If you remember back when the Hawaiian legislator was also starting to be a hard advocate towards trying to regulate the gaming industry as well. 2 of the bills would ban selling such games to people under the age of 21. The other 2 require publishers to clearly label games that have loot boxes and disclose the odds of winning items. Now, on the possibility that the bill does get passed, or bills get passed, that will end up regulating or banning loot boxes or pay-to-win mechanics as a whole here in the US, what would that mean in terms of Union Cross? Well, no matter how you look at it, Union Cross will end up being hit in a very large way. We already kind of mentioned it previously before, but let's say that under the best case scenario, what would potentially happen to Union Cross, okay? Assuming there was like minimal impact to Union Cross, what would be the kind of situation would we be in? Well, first of all, like I mentioned before, the age rating for the game would indeed have to go up to 21 or older in order to even download the game in the first place, in addition to the age restriction requirement that pops up at the very beginning of the game. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but that actually has some pretty potential huge ramifications that could be involved. Not only does this mean that the actual App Store account that you happen to have, whether it happens to be on Android or Apple, your account age now needs to match the correct age in order to even download the game, on top of any possible parental controls that might be tied to it if you happen to have parents that like that sort of thing. Assuming that anyone under the age of 21 would not actually be able to play the game at all, which of course there will still be ways around that if you really wanted to get around that. But assuming that nobody under the age of 21 will be able to play the game, it'll still impact Union Cross in a very big way. Just because of the fact that a large portion of the player base in Union Cross are actually minors. Believe it or not, okay? Even according to my own YouTube analytics of you guys who are watching this video right now, a good portion of you are in that 18 to 24 years age range. As you can see just from my own YouTube analytics of you guys watching my video, about half of you are in that age range right there, and the other half are already fully grown adults and such, okay? So it is very likely that as a result of just simply raising the age restriction on playing Union Cross, it's very possible just roughly half the player base could just disappear. Very possibly. Now, of course, for those who truly enjoy still playing Union Cross or would still continue wish doing so, there's still easy ways to get around this. You could very possibly just make a new account, make a new App Store account with a different age rating so that way you can re-download it and play it again. But then there's also a potential issue of, well, because of the fact that your account is tied to your Facebook account, will the game look at your Facebook age? And use that as another means of verifying whether or not you're old enough to play the game in the first place, in which case you'll need to change your age on Facebook. Which again is still not difficult, but it's still more hurdles you have to jump through. So while it's still not impossible for minors to play the game, it would most likely significantly cut down a large portion of the player base, because I'm willing to bet a lot of the casual players who do play the game are not going to take the time to actually go through all those hurdles to go ahead and play the game again. They'll probably just be like, oh, well, I guess I can't play anymore, and they'll just delete the app. Now, on the other hand, despite the ramifications of age restrictions such as this, it would probably not affect the financial situation of the game all too much, or at least it would get affected, but not by a significant amount, just because of the fact that the whales in the game are most likely to still be able to play the game, just due to the fact that I'm willing to bet most whales that are playing are already fully grown adults, already have a stable job, are already over the age of 21, in which case Union Cross might not see that too much of a dip in revenue. There will probably still be a bit of a dip in revenue just because of the fact that underage players can still have jobs and stuff, can still have an income, and very possibly can get, VIP every once in a while if they wanted to. So while it might not be the greatest dip in revenue, it will still be very likely a somewhat dip in revenue. Because again, this is about half the player base you could be potentially losing. Now, another possible situation that could arise is if they don't end up changing the age rating, because like I mentioned before, Kingdom Hearts is a property of Disney as well, and it's very possible, like I can completely see it happening, very possible that Disney would not feel comfortable with having a game that's rated for mature audiences only. Okay, they might want to try and maintain that 4+ and up rating as much as possible, in which case, if that ends up being the case, there would have to be some significant changes to the structure of Union Cross as a whole. to the point where you could even state that Union Cross would no longer become a gacha game anymore. It would simply just be a normal game that you can download to play, and instead of banners that you would pull metas from, and essentially, you know, the core basis of what makes Union Cross a gacha game in the first place, they instead just might make it where you can straight up just purchase medals, purchase accessory parts and whatnot. Whatever has a randomized chance of getting whatever, you would simply just be able to purchase it straight up with money or jewels. That's probably what would end up being the most likely scenario if that were to happen. But at the same time, the consequences of something like that would be that because of the fact that Square Enix and Bitgroove, the people who are pretty much in charge of maintaining Union Cross, they might not be happy with a move like that, just because of the fact that, you know, gacha games and gacha mechanics, loot box mechanics, pay to win mechanics are such a gold mine for revenue that making a move like that pretty much goes more to like a DLC type territory where you just straight up buy it rather than, you know, paying for a loot box and having to pay it over and over and over again to try and get your desired item, will have such a huge drawback cut on the revenue that it's very possible that as a gaming company they just might decide to just completely cut Union Cross as a whole and just not do it at all in the first place. To be honest, from my perspective, that's probably what's most likely to end up happening if Disney does end up being persistent on maintaining its for and older age rating. But under the assumption that all things go well and Union Cross does, the servers do stay up and we can still play the game even if it goes more of a DLC route in terms of content. At the same time, this would also be a strong indicator that the game would be superbly more free-to-play friendly because of the fact that you're most likely not going to be spending as much money into the game as of now anymore, in which case they're going to want to keep players incentivized to keep playing as much as possible, so they'll try and create more content, actually reasonable rewards. Pretty much all of the core problems that Union Cross has been having the entire like 3-year time span that this game has been out, a lot of those might actually be addressed finally and actually fixed. Now, the worst possible scenario that could happen, of course, is that Union Cross could just completely be shut down. The servers could be shut down and no one would be able to play the game anymore. In which case, what would this mean? Well, that would possibly mean, because of the fact that the bill, for all we know, could potentially be passed within a year, at the very least, okay, it's very possible that, you know, the bill could take a few years to even get legalized or at least even have a decision reached upon for it. But in the best case scenario, let's say, that would mean that the story for Union Cross could potentially see a heavily increased rate of appearing within the game. Okay, so as of right now in Global, for example, we tend to only get like 5 quests of story per month, which is a very slow rate, to be honest, especially because of the fact we tend to be about 6 months behind JP almost all the time in terms of story. It's very possible that the story might be heavily expedited in order to try and have players as filled in as possible in terms of what the story is supposed to be before it gets shut down. Now, on the other hand, it's very possible that they might not complete the story at all in the first place, and instead might choose to do something similar to what Unchained Key back cover did, and just have a completely separate title that goes over the story for us to be able to catch up with the lore and such. Out of the two options, this is probably going to be the most likely scenario if the game ends up being shut down, where they'll just have another title to go over the story for us. Gambling in the form of banners are the core of Union Cross. Everything stems from the gacha gambling mechanic in the first place, and at the same time, many of the problems that are the core problems that are in Union Cross as well are partially tied to that as well. So if the bill ends up being passed sometime within a year or more, that ends up straight up banning loot box and pay to win type features, which in this case would be banners period in Union Cross, The most likely scenario that I see happening is that these servers would be shut down just because of the fact that it would be too much of a loss of revenue, on top of the fact that I highly doubt Disney would want a game with a mature rating kind of tied to them in a brand perspective. So even if they keep the 4+ rating, it would completely almost make Union Cross a completely different game because of how much they would change, in which case that would almost completely cut the revenue, which I'm willing to guess more than half from what it currently has, in which case they might just deem it's not making enough money, so they just might completely scrap the game as a whole. So I'm willing to bet the servers will end up just be completely shut down. But other than that, that's it for today, guys. I would love to hear what your guys' thoughts and opinions are in the comment section down below. This is a very important and interesting topic that I believe everybody within the Kingdom Hearts and Union Cross gaming community should know about. But other than that, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. It is the best way to know when I upload more videos such as this one. My name is Brian from Kingdom Hearts Cross Nation, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace, guys.